Hello and welcome to another Portworx demo. My name is Ryan Wallner, and today we're going to be talking about I/O profiles. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the new I/O profile, Auto. The Auto profile has been released in 2.7.0, and the documentation is where the rest of our I/O profiles usually are. So the great thing about an Auto profile is that it allows Portworx to select the best suited profile, the I/O profile, for your application on behalf of the application. So you don't need to know this ahead of time. If you're used to setting this and figuring out your I/O patterns beforehand, this makes things a little easier. If you're new to profiles, I'm definitely going to do a quick review about what exactly happens here. With Portworx, if you set a profile, what'll happen is the type of I/O pattern is used. So with sequential I/O profile, it looks for data access sequentially. And that's the best profile for that sort of data access. There's also another profile called random. And as you would imagine, it's when data accessed more randomly, and this is best suited to set the profile for. Now, a lot of databases have sort of a write sync, and this is what we call DB or DB remote. What Portworx will do is try to coalesce those syncs into a single sync if it's within a 50 millisecond window. And this improves the performance of that I/O pattern for databases. Now, the best part about the Auto profile is it will detect these patterns for you on behalf of the application and set it internally so you don't have to worry about it. So that's a quick review, but if you wanted to get more details about exactly what they do, you can check out our documentation, or our Portworx certified admin goes into detail about these things as well. So now let's see how it works. So let's connect to our Portworx cluster. We have Portworx already running in our Kubernetes cluster, so we're ready to go. Let's head over to our Postgres assets and look at our Postgres spec file. Typically, your spec file for Postgres will use a storage class, it'll define a persistent volume claim, and it'll define the deployment that actually deploys Postgres. Now, in most cases, and in the past, you would have to set the profile to DB or DB remote, or, depending on the application, you have to know this ahead of time. What we're saying now is set it to auto and let Portworx decide. So let's go ahead and set this to auto and deploy our application to our cluster. Now what we can do is make sure our application is up and running. Let's get our pods and PVCs. We have one pod here and one PVC for Postgres. So let's take that pod name and go inside that container. And now we're within the Postgres, and let's create that test database. So I have some pgbench commands here that we can run for our purposes. So create that test database, exit out of here. We're going to load up this database with some test data. Once that test data is available, we can run some tests against this data. So now what's going to happen is this pgbench test is going to kick off a test against the database, and it's going to use an I/O profile to do this on its own. Now it's up to Portworx now to sort of detect what profile is being used to access that data and set it internally. Let's connect here. and we can see that our Pixie Cuddle volume list, you can see our PVC here is attached on node 103. And if we do a Pixie Cuddle status, you can see we have node 103, 101, and 102. And we are on 101. So let's head over to node 1.3. And this is where that volume now is attached on. Great, we're on 103. And we can do a Pixie Cuddle volume inspect on the PVC. And what you can see here is that we have 3 replicas. We have some IOs in progress because of our PG bench test. And we have our IO profile set to auto. So now our test ran. Now, what profile is our volume using? Well, to check on this, let's go ahead and take a peek at what Portworx changed our volume to. Pager. Yep. So now you can see that it handled an IO pattern change for our volume. This is our volume. We can compare it up here. That's the same volume ID. And it says setting DB remote profile. This makes sense. We're using Postgres as our database. And the pattern of database type of access, where it's write sync, was picked up by Portworx and set in the back end on our profile. So now our volume is using the DB remote profile. And this happened automatically. So use IO profile equal auto to have this occur for your Portworx volumes. And I hope this was useful. Definitely check out the release notes and IO profile documentation on our website. Until next time, take care.